So, welcome to this Dharma talk. Today, I'd like to talk about Dhamma, and Dhamma has some broad meanings. There's actually no kind of agreed on translation of the word Dhamma in English, so it's pretty open to quite a few interpretations. Um, but we could define Dhamma as the teachings. Uh, We could also define it as nature. These are some of the ways it's been defined, and I'll be talking more about this as we proceed to the Dhamma talk. Sometimes it's understood as phenomena, just like not a single thing, but an experience of a thing. And often it's just understood as the truth of the way things actually are. So there's a number of ways we can understand Dhamma. And I was listening to a Dhamma talk the other day, probably just at the beginning of the week, which inspired me to think about talking about Dhamma by Achan Jayasaro. And I was listening to it in Thai, so I'm kind of brushing up on my Thai. And I thought it was so good that I fed it into AI and I got the English translation of it. So I'm going to be using some of the things he said on that with this talk. But he was referring to a Buddhadasa, I think, and he was talking about how Buddhadasa made 4 points about this term Dhamma. And so I'll be relating these 4 points and, 4 ways we can understand it. So one way that we can understand it is as nature, as I mentioned earlier. But in many respects, it's the nature of all things, all phenomena. And I bring to mind something that I've chanted so many times. I don't know how many times I've chanted this, but the chant goes like this. Sabbe sankhara anicca, sabbe dhamma anattati. So what that means is sabbe sankhara, all conditioned phenomena is impermanent. Everything comes and goes, all conditioned phenomena. Conditioned phenomena here refers to things that arise out of causes and conditions, like you and me and the trees outside and, the computer here, everything, all these conditioned phenomena. So, or phenomena, sorry, I should say. So that's like pretty broad. It's everything. However, it doesn't include Dhamma. But it doesn't include Nibbana, the unconditioned. So what we hear in the next couple of words, like Sabbe Dhamma Anatta, it talks about Dhammas. So here, Dhamma means that includes both the conditioned and the unconditioned. Nibbana is unconditioned. It doesn't arise and it doesn't change. It's a constant. But it's we can't really talk about it in terms like that because it can't be described. It can't be described with conceptually, basically. But it is a reality. And here it is also called a Dhamma. Do you remember how I said before that sometimes it's considered as an experience of something? So here, Dhamma, Dhamma could be an experience of me looking at the striker. I have an experience of looking at my striker, and that's a Dhamma. But as it includes the unconditioned again, a Dhamma could include Nibbana, or the unconditioned, something that doesn't arise and change. It's a constant, and it can't be described using conceptual language. So that's one way of understanding this term Dhamma or Dhamma. By the way, when I put an R in there as Dharma, it's the way it's written in Sanskrit. That's the way it's spelled Dharma in English for the Sanskrit version of Dhamma. The Pali version is Dhamma, Dhamma. So there's a difference there's a difference in pronunciation and a difference in the spelling, but there's no difference in the meaning. So coming to the next way of understanding Dhamma, and it is the second meaning, and it is the ordinary way of nature. And it's about sankharas again. Sankharas are conditioned. There's a number of different ways we can describe the term sankhara. Sometimes it means mental creations, and sometimes it means all conditioned experience. So here now we're talking about conditioned experience. We're talking about the law of nature, and I'm looking out at quite a few trees, and I reflect on being in rainforests, and in the rainforest there's nature. The ecosystem in a rainforest is the way nature is working together. There's certain laws that are happening. There's causes and conditions arising and changing, and every little part of this ecosystem is connected. And in many respects, I mean, you could describe dependent arising like that, like dependent arising meaning the principle behind the way the Buddha explained how things arise and how things cease. And if you remember me talking about this at other times, I've described dependent arising as like in these few phrases, when this is, that is, with the arising of this, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. With, when sorry, when there is, I'll say it again. When this is, that is, with the arising of this, that arises. When this is not, that is not, with the ceasing of this, that ceases. In other words, all things arise because of causes and conditions. There's no independent thing in all this. And so I'm referring now to the Dhamma, or of the ecosystem in a rainforest. There's these all things are coming together in an interdependent way, and it's abiding by laws of Dhamma. It causes have conditions. Insects respond to life. Insects are part of this ecosystem, for example. Trees are part of this ecosystem. We're part of this ecosystem. We go to a rainforest and we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide, and the trees, I guess they transpire, don't they? They transpire oxygen and carbon dioxide. There's this kind of dynamic relationship between the trees and our breathing, and the insects and everything in this rainforest. So it is abiding by the natural law of causes and conditions. And I guess there's something else here that we can understand as natural laws, although it carries over into the next point on Dhamma. That is that there's a kind of a natural way the laws of our mind interact. Like there's natural laws in our mind, for example, that causes have conditions. If we act in an unskillful way, unskillfulness or unwholesomeness will likely follow. And similarly, if we act in wholesome ways, wholesomeness will likely follow. It's this kind of law and way of understanding the nature of things. So coming to the third point, and it's about the Dhamma as practice. And I've got here, there's something called Dhammacharya. And Dhammacharya, I think, translates as the practice of Dhamma, or the conduct with Dhamma. And this specifically relates to the practice of humans in relationships to these natural laws. And it involves actions of body, speech, and mind that are aligned with these laws, leading to well-being and ultimately liberation. So I think this could include, for example, the four establishments of mindfulness, the Eightfold Path, for example, practicing along these lines, understanding dependent arising and practicing in a way where we understand this dependent arising and how we work with it, and how we can influences causes and conditions coming together. We can influence causes and conditions with our actions and our intentions. Actually, a lot of causes and conditions coming together we have absolutely no impact on because it's just following along the laws of nature. However, we can have some influence in the way we act. There's a slither of influence we can have. So coming back to this one, Dhammacharya, I was thinking that it involves, for example, the four establishments of mindfulness. Four establishments of mindfulness, of course, are these areas of practicing mindfulness in a way that leads to liberation. And we have mindfulness of body, which includes, postures and physical sensations and reflections on mortality, the body's mortality, and so on. We have mindfulness of feeling, or in Pali it's called Vedana Nupassana Satipatthana, which is this tracking of the hedonic tones of our experience. The hedonic tones refer to, the feeling tones of our experience, which refer to whether something is pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. And there's another category with Vedana. Vedana is the Pali term for feeling tones. There's another category here that refers to whether a feeling is associated with being caught in the world, or samsara, and it's called worldly feelings, and or whether it's inclining towards liberation. It's inclining towards being on the Eightfold Path. It's associated with that, and that's called unworldly feelings. This is called unworldly feelings, and I like to call it spiritual feelings because it's a little bit easier to mouth. So a worldly pleasant feeling, for example, could be the taste of chocolate, or something else arising from the senses, like a hedonic pleasure arising from the senses. A spiritual pleasant feeling could arise from mindfulness of the impermanence of that taste of chocolate, for example, and that's pleasant. The being mindful is pleasant. So a spiritually pleasant feeling is related to that mindfulness. It's sort of we're on the path. It's associated with movement towards liberation. And a hedonic unpleasant feeling could be something as simple as cutting our hand and feeling the pain in our hand, or having an accident and falling over and there's pain. So it's understandably pain, and it's a worldly painful experience. An unworldly or a spiritual painful experience could be this experience of something called samvega. Samvega is the shock and dismay at seeing what's happening in the world, what's happening in our lives, what's happening with samsara, and having this sense of urgency to escape from samsara, seeing the dukkha nature of the world and what we're doing in the world, and having this sense of urgency. So in this respect, this unpleasant feeling that arises from seeing the way things are in samsara, seeing how we're caught up in cyclic suffering, that's unpleasant, but it's a spiritual unpleasantness because it'll lead us to practice in a way where we can find liberation. So anyway, I'm just going through the 4 establishments of mindfulness at the moment. So we have mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind, which refers to mental objects, and in the practice, it actually refers to a range of thoughts and emotions and moods and so on, and states of mind related to either when we're caught up in the 3 root causes of suffering, greed, ignorance, and hatred, or their opposites. And this particular establishment also includes states of mind that may be like surpassing, like rising above worldly experiences. It can include states of mind that are liberated, awakened, highly concentrated, and so on. So this is, with this particular foundations, with the first 3 foundations actually, with the first 3 establishments, what we're looking at is the arising of experience and being present for it. And just even knowing it, just knowing this experience has arisen and tracking it and being with it. So that is enough. So when we come to the 4th foundation, the name for it is, I'll say it in Pali and then I'll translate it into English. Dharma nupasana satipatthana. So Dhamma here refers to phenomena, refers to the way things work together. It refers to the way things actually are, and it refers to everything that I was talking about previously. And here, the English translation of it is, mindfulness of phenomena, or tracking along and being and seeing with awareness phenomena. So, with this particular foundation, it's talking about patterns of mind. And it's also talking about phenomena or dhammas that can't really be put anywhere else in those foundations, because the 4 foundations encompass all of our life. Every type of experience we'll have in our life. So this 4th foundation, the one that's focusing on dharmas, is related to, excuse me, I'm just going to shut my door. My grandchildren have just arrived at home, and I can hear their excitement in the background. Not that I'm trying to shut them out. I'm just make it so. Actually, they might come up and open. They might come in my room, so be ready for that. So this is a mindfulness of dhammas in many respects, like mindfulness of what's happening in our life. So coming back to mindfulness of dhammas, and what we have in this particular foundation or this particular establishment is there are 4, how many subdomains? Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subdomains. I think 5 subdomains, maybe 6. I'll just go through them. I'll count them up as I go. So the first subdomain is tracking and being with the hindrances. So with this particular establishment, with this particular subdomain, what happens is we are aware of the various hindrances, the hindrances of sensual craving, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and agitation or worry, rumination, remorse, and paralyzing doubt. We're aware of those experiences. We track them, we notice them, we understand them, and we work towards reducing their impact. So there's something more than just being aware, like we do in the previous establishments. Here we're applying some, I guess you could say, intelligence, some discernment to be able to reduce their impact. So the fourth foundation or the fourth establishment stands apart from the first three. And here we're looking at patterns, we're looking at dharmas. So dharmas in the multiple sense of phenomena. We're looking at dharmas in the other ones as well. But in this case, we're looking at Dhamma here as a practice that leads to liberation. So we're working on particular patterns that can, and working on them in a way that they can lead to liberation. So we're applying some intelligence, some discernment about how we attend to these particular experiences. So the next, I'm not sure if this is the right order, but I'll go in this order anyway. I think the next subdomain, I'll do it like this anyway, is the 7 factors of awakening. And I'm going to say it like this because the 7 factors of awakening are kind of the opposite of the 5 hindrances. The 7 factors of awakening, as I mentioned earlier, mindfulness, investigation of dhammas, energy or effort, joy or piety. Piety is this piety or rapture. Piety is a kind of this bubbly, energetic feeling that arises in our body as a result of concentration, actually, usually, or other or actions that are good deeds and arising of joy, like this kind of a joyous feeling arising in our hearts. So joy, tranquility, which is a relaxed body, a calm mind. Those two components, passaddhi in Pali, but it's calm, and it's a calm and serene space, tranquility. And then concentration, which of course is samadhi, which is the coming together of attention and gathering it in, and so it's all going in one direction, a unified mind. And then the final, the 7th factor awakening is equanimity. Analeo describes it as equipoise, because sometimes the way we describe equanimity is as if there is no joy and there's no, there's no pain, or there's no reactions to pain or pleasure. There's a kind of a steadiness. But in this case, when we're thinking about the 7 factors of awakening, joy is there. Joy is one of the factors. So a good way to describe this 7th factor is as equipoise. So coming back to how we work with this now, we're working with it. We're working with awareness of it. We know that it's there, but rather than reducing its impact like we do with the 5 hindrances, we're actually nourishing it. We're working in a way where we're implying, for want of a better word, a kind of an emotional intelligence to it, to nourish these wholesome factors. So here again, it's a kind of a practice leading towards awakening. It's very helpful. So, and I'll say something else here. There's various translations of the Satipatthana Sutta, which is where this practice is described. The foundations of the establishments of mindfulness is probably the best translation of Satipatthana. So there's various translations of it, and in different languages, and I think the subdomains that are consistent across the various translations are the hindrances and the 7 factors of awakening. The other subdomains that I'll talk about now are not necessarily consistently appearing in all the translations, but they're still valuable foundations. I think in the original translation in Pali, they were there. So coming to the next subdomain, and I apologize, I can't remember the order at this point in time, but let's call it the five khandha. The 5 khandha are khandha refers to the aggregates, and this refers to the aggregates that we compose to make a self. Like we have form, which is body, feelings, which is Vedana, which I talked about earlier, like the qualities of pleasantness, unpleasantness, or neither. And they arise in terms of uh, whether something is, uh, well, these feelings are these qualities of pleasantness, unpleasantness, or neither. We also have perceptions, which is the way we recognize some things. Sometimes it's called memory, like we have a conceptual memory of things. Like I'm hearing the voice of one of my grandchildren right now, and I recognize his voice. I'm perceiving his voice. So that's perceptions. Uh, Sankhara, which is this mental volitional component. It's the mental creations that we have. So we have form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, which are the way we create the world. Perceptions have a concept, but then what we do with perceptions, we tell stories with the concepts. We make stories out of them. We create things with the concepts. So that's the mental formations. And we have consciousness. So form, feeling, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Consciousness is the knowing of experience. That it's a verb here. It's not a thing. It's not a noun. In fact, they're all verbs, but it is the knowing of experience. And what we're doing with this particular um, establishment or subdomain of the establishment of dhammas is we're looking at how these five aggregates kind of we hold on to them and bring them together and hold on to them and cling to them tightly so that they give this illusion, I guess. They give this illusion of a constant lasting self. Whereas in fact, they are all impermanent. They're all they're all associated with one another, but they're all kind of impermanent experiences. And there's no self to be found in it. So the practice of mindfulness here is tracking these, seeing these five aggregates in a way where we start to see them very clearly, and it loosens off our clinging to a sense of self, a constant lasting thing in all this, and seeing the self as it actually is, at it as a changing collection of experiences, streams of dependently arising processes interacting, to quote Lee Brasington. So that's that. That's another subdomain. The next subdomain is mindfulness of the six sense spheres. This means six sense spheres refers to sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, and or touch and bodily sensing, taste and mind. Now, I think the five physical senses are pretty easy to understand, but the sense of mind refers to how the mind is considered as a sense, and its objects are mental events, you know, and we perceive, we have a consciousness of these mental events, we have a knowing of these mental events, and they are all changing. So, but, and the consciousness, when consciousness is understood as the knowing of these experiences, the knowing that we're having a thought, the knowing that we're experiencing a taste, the knowing that we're seeing something, the knowing that we're smelling something, the knowing that we're physically sensing something, bodily sensing something. This knowing, we think it's like permanent. We think there's a feeling, oh, that's the real me. That's who I really am. You know, if I can see that I'm not really my emotions and my thoughts, and I'm not really my body, but I am the knowing. You know, we identify it with us very strongly. But in fact, there's nobody there. There's no constant thing there. It is also changing. It is also changing. It changes like a mirror. Just as if we hold up a mirror and we're saying, oh, that's a mirror, but oh no, that's a person in the mirror or whatever it is. It changes because the objects that it's knowing changes, if that makes sense. So these five khandha, when we can practice mindfulness of them, we can see them for what they are, and we can have some wisdom about them and not cling to them so tightly. And that is liberating. So the next one, I think, uh, oh, sorry, I've talked about the six sense spheres, how haven't I? Sorry, I hope I haven't confused you. I started to talk about the six sense spheres, and then I reverted back to talking about the khandha. But the six sense spheres, what happens here is we're aware of the six sense spheres, like sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, and mind. And we're also aware of the fetters in relationship to the six sense spheres. The fetters include four of the hindrances. And specifically, they include paralyzing doubt, sensual craving, ill will, and restlessness. And they also include a range of psychophysiological um, patterns that block us from waking up. They block us from waking up. They're called fetters in that respect. So these other psychological processes are related to particular patterns, and I'll just go through them very briefly without giving a great long Dharma talk on the whole of the 10 fetters. But one of the first fetter is actually something called personality view. It's a belief in that there is a self in our personalities. And that's all I'll talk about it for the moment. Another fetter is this belief that rites and rituals and performing rites and rituals will wake us up. Like, if we do a particular form of practice that's about, say bowing or, respecting or something like that. Not to say that doesn't lead to great, great insight, but it's this belief that doing the rites and rituals or these conditions or these social ways of doing things, that will lead to awakening, whereas only insight can lead to awakening. So it's a fetter. Another fetter is the other fetters that aren't within the hindrances are um, uh, the is this attachment to the material realms, like the attachment to the jhanas that are of a material realm, and attachment to the immaterial realms. So they're two fetters. And the last fetter to go, another fetter is uh, clinging to the conceit I am, which is this self-conceiving process, which is like clinging to an ego. Like we have an ego, we believe it to be me, I, myself, and we hold on to it. Whereas in fact, it's just often just a creation of our mind. So it's letting go of that one. And the last hindrance, the last fetter to go is ignorance. And ignorance is the opposite of wisdom. It is not seeing, it is not knowing, not seeing the way things are, actually being caught up in delusion about the way things are. So these 10 fetters, are associated with the six sense spheres. When they're associated with the six sense spheres, they block us from awakening. So mindfulness of the six sense spheres is being able to see that and then also release the fetters that are associated with these six sense spheres so that we can just experience the six sense spheres as they are, which is waking up, basically. So coming to the last subdomain, and this subdomain is related to, well, it's related to the Four Noble Truths. And I would like to add that it also relates to the Four Ennobling Truths, insofar as Noble Truths refer to having experiences of Nibbana, in my view. Ennobling Truths refer to having awakening experiences, but not to the extent of Nibbana. So, like having insights into our psychological patterns, for example, and being able to let them go, being able to um, see through their elusive nature, and to let go of clinging to this sense of I, me, and myself as a lasting thing. That's not to do with, that's not to say we don't hold on to roles in our lives and to do roles in a way that's best for everyone. Like, my grandchildren in my house right now, and they'll be pretty weird if I went up to them and said, "Oh, Granddad doesn't really exist. He doesn't really exist. He's just a creation in my mind, and he's a story that I make up." They'd be being very confused. So it's important to hold on to roles um, and hold them lightly, so that we can live in life and be functional in life and be kind to other people. But at the end of it all, it is actually our clinging to these stories of ourself as our conceived stories of ourselves that becomes a real barrier. So I mentioned ignorance as the last fetter, and ignorance is this, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, ignorance is just not seeing the way things are, just being kind of having the veils of delusion covering and distorting our perceptions. So this now we're coming up to what we're coming up to now is the Four Truths, and what happens with the Four Truths is that we realize various patterns. We realize this suffering and the causes of the suffering. We realize the relationship to the suffering and its causes. We realize the relationship to dukkha and its causes. And when we let go of the causes, we experience awakening, some freedom. Ultimate freedom if we're fully letting go of the causes of suffering. Relative freedom if we're just reducing the causes of suffering. If we're just kind of letting go of specific patterns that may result in specific kind of dukkha. And then what we also see is the way to live this life, this free life. So we realize the way to live is practicing the Eightfold Path, of course, and practicing the Eightfold Path of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, and right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right effort, right mindfulness and concentration, so that it leads to awakening. So in this particular subdomain, what we're doing is we're watching the way things work. If we have a moment of even relative freedom, we can apply the Four Noble Truths to that, and we can be aware of these four ennobling patterns in a liberating way. So, wow, that was a big, long-winded talk about the conduct here with the practice of Dhamma. But I think that it gives us an idea of what that particular point means. I want to say also that there are other practices within the teachings of the Buddha that lead to awakening that are not necessarily contained within the practice of the four establishments of mindfulness. And I'll relate those particular practices in a little while after I talk about the last point that I want to make about Dhamma. And this last point is called Dharma Desana. And here the Dharma refers to the teachings of the Buddha, or the teachings of the way things actually are. It's called Buddha Dhamma here. And in many respects, Dhamma here refers to the teachings of the way things are. And it need not have a teacher. The teachings of the way things are need not have a person or a being that relates to it as a teacher. It is just the teachings of the way things are. It's being able to be provided with a framework for practice and enabling practitioners to understand and overcome suffering. And Buddha Dhamma is essentially here referring to the teachings of the Buddha, which sometimes translates as Dhamma, but I mean you could have other Dhammas as well, like you could have Jesus Dhamma, for example, or you could have we I think we each and every one of us have our own Dhamma. We could say, Malcolm's talking Malcolm Dhamma at the moment. It's this sense of our own way of waking up and understanding particular frameworks. Like what we understand in this teaching is the framework of the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, dependent arising, and so on. And in this way, we can talk about Dhamma as meaning these teachings. And we call it Buddha Dhamma usually, or we can just call it Dhamma. So there is, I mentioned before that there's a whole array of meditation practices we can do. And some ways that we practice meditation are by reflections. And in the Buddhist array of meditations there's a number of reflections. 3 of these reflections refer to reflecting on the quality of the Buddha, such as, his knowledge and, and so on. Another reflection is reflecting on the qualities of the Dhamma. And yet another reflection is reflecting on the qualities of the Sangha. So I'm going to focus on reflections on the qualities of the Dhamma here, because I've often used this as a way of uplifting my spirits, and I've often chanted this, and it's been quite a support. And yet another thing we do with this is we take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And taking refuge in the Dhamma is taking refuge in this truth of the way things are. So here is a chant that I do. It's called Homage to the Dhamma, and it's called a Vandana, Vardana. So I'll say it in Pali first, then I'll clarify what each of the Pali words mean, and then I'll say it again, I'll chant it again, but adding the English meanings to it. So first of all, the Pali. Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Upanayiko Pachatang Vinitipo Vinoho Hi. So basically, when we talk about Savakato, we're talking about the Dharma as being well expanded, like Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo, the Dharma of the Blessed One is well expounded and complete, offering a clear path from beginning to end. Sanditiko refers to the Dharma is verifiable and can be known directly by anyone who practices it. Akaliko, the next one is Akaliko. The Dhamma is timeless and applicable at any time, in any place. Its truths about suffering and its causes remain constant. Ehipasiko. The Dharma invites all to come and see for themselves. It challenges individuals to investigate the truth rather than just blindly believing. Upanayiko. Upanayiko, the Dharma is something to be internalized and practiced, leading to personal change and improvement. Pachatam, pachatam venitabo vinoho hi. The Dharma is to be realized personally by the wise, meaning the ultimate understanding comes from one's own direct experience and effort. So, as well as being a refuge, it's something that it's a refuge because it's a constant. You know, our egos will come and go, our selves will come and go, but that there's something constant in all this. There's something constant about life, and the Dhamma is one of these constants. So I regularly take refuge in the Dhamma, and I'm just going to repeat that chant now and add to it the English versions, the English translations as we repeat them. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, the Dhamma of the Blessed One is perfectly expounded. Sanditiko, to be seen here and now. Akaliko, not a matter of time. Ehipasiko, inviting one to come and see. Upanayiko, leading inwards. Pachatang vinitabo vinohohi, to be known by the wise, each for themselves. So I hope I've explained a little bit about the way we can understand Dhamma, this term that is so meaningful, yet so broad and wide and all-encompassing. So I thank you for your attention, and I trust we can all wake up with our confidence in the Dhamma.